Thanks for joining us on episode 1453 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Jeremy Haselwood. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to find the hope in discovering your purpose is key, and one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast by my friend Scott Mader. I had to kind of look deeper at when I got to this point where the music was, I essentially removed it from my life, at least in terms of trying to pursue that as my career and feeling that this was my purpose, but recognizing that this journey that I had, like this wasn't my purpose. It was a passion, but not my purpose. What did I learn from that? Like, what is it about that resonated with me?
Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world. In today's podcast episode, I interview Jeremy Haselwood. I asked Jeremy about what brought him to the point of writing and putting out his book, Finding Your Edge. I also asked Jeremy about how his faith helps him believe that we all have a purpose. And Jeremy also shares with you how to overcome what is holding you back. I've got a new book coming out called Inspired Living, Assembling the Puzzle of Your Call by Mastering Your Time, Your Talent, and Your Treasures. You can find out more about it and sign up for getting more information over at inspiredstewardship.com, Inspired Living. That's inspiredstewardship.com, Inspired Living. Jeremy is a dynamic and accomplished 2-time best-selling author and entrepreneur that has carved a niche as a renowned digital marketing consultant and inspiring keynote speaker. With a deep-seated passion for empowering individuals and organizations, Jeremy has dedicated his career to helping people maximize their talent and purpose. His personal story of life transformation, combined with his engaging speaking style, makes him a sought-after expert in the industry. Jeremy's profound insights and strategies have inspired countless individuals to unlock their full potential and align their careers with their true purpose. His life experiences have been anything but typical, which he draws from to connect with people from all different backgrounds. From leaving his home state to pursue his dream at 20 years old, to working in the corporate world, dabbling in the music industry, then entrepreneurship, Jeremy is full of life lessons and insights. Jeremy's latest book, Finding Your Edge, How to Unlock Your Talent and Purpose, debuted at number 2 on the Life Transformation book charts. Welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Hey, thank you for having me here, Scott. Happy to have our discussion today.
Absolutely. So we talked in the intro. I shared a lot about your journey and coming to this point of writing, Finding Your Edge, the book that you're putting out, and all of this work that you've done. But I always think of intros as sort of like the Instagram photos of our life. We frame them to show a certain portion, but we don't always necessarily talk about the whole story. So would you unpack a little bit more about your journey and what brought you to this point where this is the message you're putting out into the world?
Yeah, I guess my journey is about 20 years in the making. And if I knew maybe 20 years ago it would take 20 years, then I don't know. I probably would have had a lot of anxiety and apprehension and whether or not this is the journey that I really want to go on. However, it's been a beautiful journey along the way. And I've learned so much about myself, about life, about people and perseverance. And it was really just about me being born and raised in Oklahoma, following a dream, moving to Atlanta, Georgia, having some highs and lows and, really high highs, really low lows, and learning about myself and along the way, putting it in the book. So I know we're going to get more into that during this discussion, but that's really kind of the high level there, and we can dive more into different details.
So when you first moved to Atlanta, what was the dream at that point? What did you think you were going there to do?
Yeah, it was a friend of mine. We used to do music back in like high school and college, and we had a rap group, interestingly. So we're like, hey, we're going to move to anywhere but Oklahoma, really, because it wasn't really a hotbed
Wait,
for the
there's not
kind
a
of
real
music we
big
made.
rap scene? And
I know, I know. I mean, they have a legit country scene, and now there's kind of some crossover country hip hop kind of things. But back then, it was like, okay, they need to move to New York or L.A. But at the time, like Atlanta started to kind of make up. You had like groups like Outkast coming out that really put Atlanta on the map. So we're like, something's different in Atlanta, so let's go down there. I have an aunt that lives in the Atlanta area, so we went down there for a summer to see if this is the dream that we wanted to pursue. And it was like the first talent show that we did, I guess. It was sponsored by a radio station, and it was an Apollo-style show where they'll boo you off the stage. And we got up there, and we actually ended up winning the show. And so we were like, okay, we are going to stay. We're going to see where this takes us. And, it really changed the whole trajectory of my life and my friend's life that moved out here with me.
And so did you stay in the music scene or what was kind of the pivot after you've been there a while?
Yeah. I mean, it was really a grind. So I moved to Atlanta when I was 20 years old. Like I wasn't even old enough to drink yet at that time, but I was like, hey, I'm moving. I actually had, 3 years of college under my belt, and a lot of people thought I was crazy for moving. They're like, hey, you only have 1 year left. Like, you're not going to finish school. And I was like, no, I'm going to finish school because that's one of my goals. I just need to be in a better position. So, really continued the music until like most of my 20s. I was probably 28, 29 when I put out like a solo project. It was my last project. But during that whole time, it was like working a full-time job, going to school full-time, working at the radio station at my school. I mean, it was like probably 3 or 4 years where I'm getting 4 hours of sleep every night consistently, just trying to make this dream happen. We're recording in the studio, and we had a studio in our apartment. We converted our little entry closet in our apartment to a recording booth. So that's where we would do all the vocals, very DIY, stapled egg crate, little mattress things around all the walls so the sound will be really good. But did that, performed every chance that we had. And it was really a hustle, and met a lot of people, performed. Gosh, I mean, there's not many places in Atlanta that we didn't perform, just trying to get some exposure. And, we found some success. Like we put out an independent project, opened up for me, one of my, I guess, if you look at like highlights, we actually created a song that got radio play back in Oklahoma, and it was like #1 on the radio in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, which was pretty fantastic. And because of the spins we got in Oklahoma, it actually charted like number 98 on the pop charts nationally. And so I'm like, I legit had like a top 100 pop song that only got played in Oklahoma. And so that was pretty cool. So it was not for nothing, and learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about what I'm capable of doing, learned about orchestrating things, learned about connecting with people and audiences. And so that was like the high, you know what I'm saying? Like it was just going and living and following a dream and pursuing that through most of my 20s.
And then you made a pivot into the corporate world and into entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, with music, and I think a lot of the arts, it's definitely like a feast or famine kind of job, if you will. So I never did music full time because, that's just not something that's going to sustain yourself. Most musicians have to have a full-time job because you're not making money. So I was working a corporate job the whole time. So I say like my 9 to 5 was corporate, working for a telecom company, and then my 5 to 9 was music. And so, the pivot really came, you start to get, not older, but it's like your priorities start to shift a little bit. Like my son was born, and, we've been going so hard in the music industry and learning a lot of kind of the ugliness and the darkness and just kind of the, I don't know what the word, it's just a lot of like people will kind of use you for what they can get out of you. It was kind of a chew you up and spit you out, very cutthroat industry. And there's some genuine, sincere people in that industry that I still keep in contact with, but a lot of people, it's very much what can they get from you? And it just didn't sit right with my soul. And it was kind of like a lot of the cliches that you hear about with the music industry. And I just wanted to make music, and the business part is the piece that really is, it just I didn't enjoy it. It became like a job that I hated. So kind of following this dream and realizing that this is not really what I want to do anymore. And having this part of my life where I'm like, I don't really know what to do now, because I've been doing music since I was like 15 years old, and having to make this shift to, I thought that was going to be my whole life. I had my whole life planned out. When I was a teenager, I knew in my 20s what I was going to be doing, in my 30s. I was going to own a record label and put out artists. And then my 40s, just get back and develop artists and kind of have ownership and invest in different things. So when the dream came to a point where it's like, I'm not going to say it was a nightmare, but it was something that just didn't move me anymore and kind of left me feeling empty. I was like, I'm not sure what to do now. And so I went through a few years where I was like, I left my whole family at home. Like I grew up, my family, my friends in Oklahoma. I have my friend that I moved out here with, but, he was married and we kind of had our own lives going. So it's like, what do I do now? And that was really the pivotal point. So I can talk more about that.
Mm-hmm.
If you like, unless you had a question about that. I know I'm just rambling over here.
No, you're doing good.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, that was kind of the pivot point, the realizing that this maybe wasn't the thing that you were going to do for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
What, I guess one of the things that I like to try to dig into for folks, that, the difference between kind of our assignment or what we're doing at a particular moment
Mm-hmm.
in time, kind of what is our purpose or a passion or calling, whatever language you want to use. Were you struggling with thinking, wait, no, this is what I was put on the planet to do, but now I'm feeling
Mm-hmm.
like there's a different, how did that struggle come about? And then what, how did you make the decision to go a new direction?
Yeah, well, it taught me a lot about the difference between passion and purpose, because I do think a lot of people equate them as being the same. I was passionate about music, and so I was like, hey, I love this. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I had to kind of look deeper at, when I got to this point where the music was, I essentially removed it from my life, at least in terms of trying to pursue that as my career. And feeling that this was my purpose, but recognizing that this journey that I had, like this wasn't my purpose. It was a passion, but not my purpose. So what did I learn from that? Like, what is it about that resonated with me? And doing work on myself, like I went back to school, went to grad school, and did a lot of assessments and batteries and coaching. And, it really helped me to recognize that there were pieces of that journey with music that were part of my purpose, but it wasn't my purpose to be a musician or an artist. But the tools that I learned, which is like connecting with people, providing some kind of hope and inspiration, because what I really got back with the music in terms of my benefit of the music was when someone hears a song and they felt inspired to do something, or being on stage and, changing the whole mood in the atmosphere. It's like, that was like something where someone came in with something, whatever they were going through during that day. You come to like a show, a performance, and you had a rough day at work. Maybe you had a good day at work, but you're there and we have this moment together. And then I'm adding something to your life that you didn't have before. And just to see the transition, especially us being like white hip hop artists, and where we perform is like predominantly non-white environments, and kind of being judged when we go on stage, and then the beat drops and we start, rhyming, and then you just see the energy shift in the room and the eyes get big and the smiles. And it's like, that's the piece. It wasn't being an artist, but it was like bringing that energy, that message, that hope, and shifting somebody from the state that they were in to an elevated state of whether it's happiness or joy or purpose. Like that's the work that I discovered about myself. So then it's like, okay, well, what do I do with that now?
And so what did you bring yourself to, once you kind of began to recognize that, wait a minute, there's a different piece here, what did you begin to do from there?
Yeah. So from that point, it was really reevaluating my life, what my talents were, what my passions were, how I can bring these together. What can I do externally? Because I do feel that purpose is not for you. It's the gift that's given to you that you share with others and that you give with others. So really analyzing my life and taking inventory of that. And that's kind of where the book came about. I mean, my book was like a 10-year journey, kind of what I learned about myself and putting together models that, when I look back at patterns in my life, like recognizing here was a pattern shift and here is what I learned from that, and putting that in a model that I could follow for myself and being able to share that with other people. So for me, it was like doing the work. And that's really like, my book is called Finding Your Edge, and EDGE is an acronym. And so it's eliminate distractions, discover yourself, generate goals, and enact discipline. So each of these things are the pieces that I did in my own life in order to really tap into who I was, what my purpose was, and not only just know what that is, but now we have to do something with it. So, what am I doing each day to make sure that I'm providing hope to people, inspiring people, and helping people recognize that where you're at right now in life, if you aspire to be something different, there's a way to do that, and it does take work. So, that's really living life and reflecting on that. Like, that's where I got a lot of the wisdom to help other people out.
So I want to dive into the book some more, but before I do that, one of the things I like to highlight for folks is how our faith journey and our life journeys kind of intersect with each other. One affects the other, and then it's kind of a feedback loop. Would you share a little bit about your faith journey and how that's affected your journey?
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't be where I am without my faith journey and my faith walk. And for me, it's like, I grew up in the church, and I know there's a lot of people that say that, and you kind of do what your parents do. This is the environment that you were put in. And, but I can say for me, it's like the way that I grew up. And even I've had moments that have occurred with myself, that I've got confirmation, like God is real, like 100%. And there's leaps of faith that I took. There's physical things that have occurred where I'm like, this is nothing but the creator, and if I didn't believe, if I didn't have a belief in that, then I think there would be a lot more hopelessness. So I think that when you do believe in something, and I'm not a person where I force my beliefs onto others. It's like, I'm going to live my life in a way that I've always done, that I know is real. And if I can affect people that way, and my example is something that inspires you to learn more about my faith, then I'll share that with you, But part of it too is like, when we talk about how your faith weaves into life, like I look at what I call the 5 forces of balance. And this is like family, it's professional, it's health, it's personal, and it's spiritual. And these 5 different areas of your life, if you're not paying attention to these, then your life is out of balance, which is what I call it the 5 forces of balance. So if your spiritual life is not right, and that doesn't mean you have to go to church or mosque or synagogue, but if you don't have that relationship, because to me it's more about relationship, then these other areas of your life will not be in balance. If my personal life, if my spiritual life is not in balance, then my family life is not in balance, and my health is likely not in balance, and the work that I'm doing professionally is not in balance. So I have to be foundationally rooted in my spirituality.
So on Finding Your Edge, you talked a little bit about where it came from out of your own personal journey, but for somebody that's hearing that title and hearing what you're talking about it, the before and what would you say is kind of the message of the book, or if you kind of had to, sum it up, read the back of the book, what
right. Yeah.
Or and what's it about?
Yeah. I mean, the book is for people, and might be you, the listener right now. If you're at a point in your life where maybe you're working in a job where you can do it with your eyes closed, it's not challenging. You have talents, you have passions, you have goals, and you're not doing anything about it. But there's kind of this longing or this feeling that you get in your stomach, your chest, where you're like, man, I know I can be doing something different. Like, that's who this book is for. And even during the writing of this, just talking to friends and colleagues kind of about my book, and they're like, wow, that's for me. Like, I need to read your book when it's ready. But it's really like, how can you get from this point of being stuck to being unstuck and actually living a life where you're walking in purpose. You're doing that journey of living your purpose, finding your purpose, and finding happiness. Because I do believe that when you are living a life where you are in line with your purpose, like there's nothing like it. Like you don't wake up dreading the day. You wake up excited about the day and how you can make a difference, or just having that confidence that you know you're not wasting away. Like if you're complacent right now, this book is for you. Like if you want to change, because there's people that are happy with being complacent, and my book is not for you because you're not going to read it anyway, you know? But if you're willing to do the work and you're complacent, you're like, man, there's more. I know there's more to life than what my life looks like right now. Like, what can I do? Because you are that common denominator. You have the power to do something. So a lot of times we just need a kickstart. We need a resource that's going to help us start that journey. And that's who my book is for.
If somebody's hearing that and they're kind of like, okay, yeah, I am struggling in this area. Maybe I'm not even 100% sure if I have a purpose or what it is yet, but I definitely know what I'm doing right now. Ain't it?
Yeah. Right.
Obviously picking up a copy of the book, but what tip or advice would you give them, beyond that, or to kind of get them started and get moving the right direction?
Yeah. The first thing I would say is you do have a purpose. Everybody has a purpose. We were created for purpose. We weren't created to waste space and consume. We're all created to do something. And the first thing I would do is, outside of buying my book, is like the first thing is like eliminating distractions. And you can't begin the work on yourself when you're distracted. And when we talk about distractions, it may be things that you don't think they are. Distractions are not just your cell phone or computer or social media. Distractions could be TV that you're watching. It could be gaming. It could be toxic people in your life. It could be food. Part of the work that we do is like, let's make a list of things that are distracting me. Like, what's keeping me from my purpose? We have 24 hours in a day. How am I spending that time? And if you really want to get into like the nitty gritty, and I kind of have this option in my book, like you can actually create a log of how you're spending your day. And you do that over a course of a few days, documenting how you're spending your time. And when you look at that, it's like, oh, this is actually a time where I'm allocating towards distraction. And I didn't even know it. So now that I'm aware of this distraction, I can do something about it. But a lot of us are kind of in this sea of distraction that we never really agreed to join. We just wake up and we're kind of blowing in the wind, if you will. So it's like taking more control over your life and your time. Like that's where you need to start, is like, let's get a hold and let's get a grip on our time and our focus.
What do you think is the thing most keeps people from actually living out their purpose?
I think it goes down to kind of the front and back end of the work that I do. One is being able to eliminate those distractions. If you're not willing to just press pause and, take an evaluation of those distractions, number one, like that's going to keep you from doing the work. But let's just say that you eliminate your distractions. You go through the whole discovery. You learn about yourself. You either go through counseling or assessments or things like that and really tap into your purpose. You've generated your goals. So you've done that part of the work. And if you're not, the other piece is like the enacting discipline. So you can have all this knowledge about yourself. You've eliminated distractions. You're focused, but you have no discipline. Like, you know what your purpose is, but you're doing nothing about it. So to me, those are the two things. If you're not on the front end eliminating distractions, and on the back end, you're not enacting that discipline, you're not going to be able to really fulfill your purpose.
What about somebody, feels like they found their purpose and they're maybe even moving in the right direction. They've been doing some work. They've started to live pieces of it, but it's not fully realized yet.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things they can do to kind of help move that into fruition and or prevent themselves from kind of getting derailed or drawn off track? Because I think that happens to a lot of us as well.
Yeah. I believe with the purpose work that we do is something where you'll receive kind of confirmation along the way that this is actually your purpose. Because another way to either maybe even reframe what you're saying is like, what if someone's going along this work or this path of doing the work on themselves with purpose, and they just keep hitting a roadblock one after another. And that will happen. And taking a page from my own life, what I thought was my purpose with music, we did hit a lot of roadblocks. But I also equate it to like, you go to the gym and you're like, hey, I want to lift 300 pounds, but you can only lift 100 pounds. You're not just going to, after a month, lift 300 pounds. Like, it's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. And then you may get to a point where you're like, look, I'm just not supposed to be lifting 300 pounds. Like, I'm not ever going to be that strong. But you know that after a period of time. So the purpose work is, there are going to be barriers in place. You are going to hit a wall several times. And my suggestion for that is to give yourself realistic timelines to accomplish something. So if you're 20 years old and your goal is to do X, give yourself 5 years. And that may sound like a long time, especially to a 20-year-old, but do something, be consistent, every day, or maybe it's not every single day, but you're working steadily towards that. You're disciplined, and give yourself 5 years. Because what I do believe, going back to faith, if that truly is your purpose, during those 5 years, there's going to be doors that will open for you that would not have opened for you if it wasn't your purpose. You are going to hit some walls, but part of this is also building up perseverance. And you need to have those challenges in your life to overcome, because you need to know that you can overcome and persevere these things. So, however, let's say you get to the end of that 5-year cycle and you're reevaluating your purpose and you look at the progress that you've made. And it's like, do you feel like you're there yet? And if not, like, if you're close, then okay, let's re-up, let's extend that deadline. But if you're like, man, I'm not even close, then my opinion, that's not your purpose, But let's look at what you learned those past 5 years, because in that work that you've done on yourself those past 5 years, just like it was with my life, there's patterns that you'll develop, and there's people that you'll meet, there's characteristics that your eyes have been open to about yourself. And that's the work that's going to prepare you for that next chapter of really tapping into your purpose.
So I've got a few questions that I like to ask all of my guests, but before I go there, is there anything else about your book or the work that you do that you'd really like to make sure that the listener hears?
Yeah. And one thing about my book that I like, and I've gotten feedback from people who have read it, is at the end of each chapter, there are these reflective questions. So it really is, this is not like a book that you just pick up, read, and set on the shelf. This is a book where it's not a workbook, but it kind of is, so I would suggest pairing it with the journal, because you are going to get out of this book what you put into it. There's a lot of really great motivational and life transformation books where, it has good quotes and things like that. And that's great. I don't knock those. Like, I think that's awesome. But my book it has that, but it also has questions for you to really help you do the work that I'm talking about doing today.
So my brand is Inspired Stewardship, and I kind of run things through that lens of stewardship. And yet that's one of those words that I've discovered means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I like to just ask, when you hear the word stewardship, what does that word mean to you?
Yeah. Stewardship, to me, at the root is kindness, and it's kindness to others. It's servitude. It's also, I have multiple meanings. Like, to me, it's kindness, which is related to servitude. But then there's also like being responsible with what's been given to you, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's people in your life. I do a lot of work with nonprofits, with my consulting business. And, we want to steward the donors. We want to make them feel like they really are making a difference. It's building those relationships, but you build that through kindness and sincerity. And that's what I believe stewardship is. And I think we're all stewards, and we should all be stewards of each other and the resources that we've been given.
So this is my favorite question that I like to ask everyone. Imagine for a minute that I invented this magic machine. And with this machine, I could pull you from where you are today and transport you into the future, maybe 150, maybe 250 years. But through the power of this machine, you were able to look back and see your entire life, see all of the connections, all of the ripples, all of the impacts you've left behind. What impact do you hope you've left in the world?
For me, the impact that I would like to make is for people to have some kind of light and when they are experiencing darkness in their life, or being able to smile whenever they're experiencing sadness, or hope when they're experiencing doubt. So if I could go back, even now, like let's say the caveman times, like tell me about this person. Like, oh, Jeremy, like he was a good person. Like he inspired me to do X. He always, when I was down, he built me up. He encouraged me. And that's really the legacy that I want to live. I want people to have hope when there doesn't seem to be hope, because I feel like the world has a lack of a lot of things. And what I key in on is hope, because there's a lot of people who have self-doubt, or based on childhood traumas or experiences, they just discount what their future can be. And I'm like, man, today you're alive, you're breathing. We can hit reset today, and let's start this over, and let's take power back, and let's reclaim that.
So what's on the roadmap? What's coming next for you as you continue on this journey?
Yeah, for me, it's continuing to really spread the word about my book. And I'm looking to do more speaking, because a book is great. It's like one person at a time, but I'm looking to expand and do more speaking to groups, doing workshops on personal development and self-care and life transformation. And those are like really the two focal pieces that I'm looking at right now to really create more of an impact with my message.
So you can find out more about Jeremy over on his website at jeremyhaselwood.com. Of course, I'll have a link to that over in the show notes so you can find it easily. Jeremy, anything else you'd like to share with the listener?
Yeah, you can also follow me on Instagram. It's jeremy.haselwood. I post content there, motivational, inspirational content. I also love music, so you'll see little pictures and videos of my vinyl collection. So we have that going as well. So if you need a little bit of hope in your feed, reach out to me there. And if you work in a corporate space, like reach out to me for speaking or workshops. Let's see what we can create for you.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Cool. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor. Go over to inspiredstewardship.com/iTunes rate, all one word, iTunes rate. It'll take you through how to leave a rating and review, and how to make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get every episode as it comes out in your feed. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.